I'm WCBI meteorologist Trevor Birchett with your 4 p.m. Saturday tropical weather update. We have the latest information out from the National Hurricane Center, and there are some important changes to the forecast for these two storms. Let me start you out with a look at satellite imagery. And really through the day today, we have noticed some increased convection with both of these storms, some brighter colors on the satellite imagery, which is indicative of stronger storms developing. And that means both of these storms are likely going to continue to intensify. Here's Tropical Storm Laura just to the south of Puerto Rico, really getting its act together. It looks a lot more symmetrical, like a classic tropical storm or a hurricane. Marco right now between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba. It's not quite as symmetrical, but it is still trying to get its act together and will likely be able to do so even more once it makes its way into the Gulf of Mexico over the next few hours. Now, let me show you the latest forecast model paths with these storms. So each of these lines is showing where one model thinks these two storms are going to go. And this is where the change comes in. Over the last several hours, these models have shifted Marco's path. We originally thought it was going to make that left turn and head into Texas or extreme western Louisiana. And now we're thinking that westerly turn is going to hold off until after it makes landfall. So we now think Marco is going to make landfall in Louisiana and then make that westerly jog. And then Laura is going to be not too far behind it and could make landfall in the same area, if not very close. You see those lines starting to overlap right there at the end. So anywhere from the Big Bend to Florida over to Texas still need to watch this thing, but it's looking more likely for a landfall in Louisiana, if not possibly even in the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Let me get you to the latest on Marco. We'll start off there. 65-mile-an-hour winds continuing to strengthen through the day today. Pressure is way down to 992 millibars. Again, the sign of a strengthening storm. And you see here where these brighter colors, these reds and oranges are starting to pop up. That is those areas of increased convection where the storms are firing up. And those are areas we're going to have to watch because those are where we're likely going to see that eye wall develop if it does so once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. Regardless, though, here's what we think is going to happen. Right now, as I mentioned, 65-mile-an-hour winds. It quickly is expected to become a Category 1 hurricane. I think by tonight we will have Hurricane Marco. It continues basically due north-northwesterly by about 1 a.m. on Monday, likely already feeling impacts on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and in Louisiana. And then it starts that westerly jog, but it is expected to make landfall first. So by 1 p.m. Monday, Hurricane Marco will be making landfall as a Category 1 storm. Anywhere from 75 to 85-mile-an-hour winds, if not just a little bit higher. So that's going to impact much of the Mississippi Gulf Coast all the way through the entire state of Louisiana through the day on Tuesday. And then there's that westerly turn bringing some heavier rain and gusty winds to portions of East Texas. But of course, that is not the only game in town. We've also got Tropical Storm Laura. Winds right now 50 mile an hour. Pressure a little bit higher than Marco, but it is still dropping. It's still trying to organize. And the same thing kind of here. You see those darker red colors where the storms are firing up as this thing really tries to get a more well-defined center of circulation. Now, the difference between Laura and Marco is Marco basically has open water until it makes landfall. Laura doesn't quite have that luxury. It is going to have to travel over Hispaniola, extremely mountainous, and then over Cuba. And land tends to tear these storms apart. The wind shear associated with the land masses really isn't good for these storms. So Laura isn't going to intensify much, staying as a 50-mile-an-hour tropical storm. But once it makes its way into the Gulf of Mexico through the day on Tuesday, that is when we are expecting, just like Marco, for this thing to strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane. And it is expected to make landfall somewhere either in Mississippi or Louisiana by about 1 o'clock on Wednesday. So Marco going to make landfall first on Tuesday, and then Laura literally less than 24 hours behind it, making landfall at a similar strength somewhere in Louisiana. Now, there's still a little cone of uncertainty. This thing could jog back over into Mississippi, could go a little bit more west, but right now it's looking like both of these storms are going to make landfall in similar locations just about 24 hours apart. We're going to have to watch this one here closely here in Mississippi and Alabama because we are expecting this thing to come pretty close to us on Thursday, and that could bring us the chance for some heavy rain and gusty winds here in Columbus and northeast Mississippi through the end of the week. So here's the bottom line for you, really what we're expecting. You might have seen on social media some rumors about these storms combining together in some sort of mega super duper hurricane. That's not going to happen. Both of these storms are going to make separate landfalls, and they're going to remain separate. Again, about 24 hours apart. So that's going to give them enough time to stay separate. But still, there's so much uncertainty with this forecast. The entire Gulf Coast should remain on alert, especially Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. Now's a great time to prepare those hurricane plans and just have an idea of what you would do if a storm strikes. Of course, still a busy hurricane season, and we've got a long way to go, even if these storms don't affect you. And again, with the warm Gulf waters, there is more strengthening possible, even than what is already forecast out of these two storms. So we're going to keep a very close eye on this. Of course, locally, I'll have the latest for you on WCBI News at 6 and over on the website, and I'll have the latest tropical update posted for you tonight at 10.